Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The neon sign of Presto Pizza glowed in the rearview mirror as Valentino pulled away from the curb, the warmth of the delivery bag seeping through his jeans. The GPS on his phone chirped, guiding him through the winding streets of the upscale neighborhood.
Turn right in 500 feet,
the robotic voice instructed. Valentino squinted at the house numbers, barely visible in the fading twilight. His fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel. This was his first week on the job, and he was determined not to screw it up. The GPS chimed again.
You have arrived at your destination.
He pulled up to an imposing Victorian mansion, its windows ablaze with light. Music and laughter drifted from inside. Valentino double-checked the address on his phone, then grabbed the pizza and headed up the walkway. The ornate front door swung open before he could knock. A tall figure in a shimmering emerald gown greeted him with a dazzling smile. "Oh, darling, you're here at last! Come in, come in!" Valentino blinked in confusion. Pizza delivery for..."
"No time for introductions, sweetie. The ball's already started."
The person ushered him inside with a flourish of satin-gloved hands. Valentino found himself swept into a grand foyer teeming with people. His jaw dropped as he took in the scene. Dozens of individuals mingled about, all sporting elaborate ball gowns, wigs, and full makeup. But as he looked closer, he realized they were all men?
"I think there's been a mistake,"
Valentino stammered. "I'm just here to deliver a pizza." A nearby guest in a voluminous purple gown laughed melodiously. "Oh, honey, that's adorable! But you can drop the act now. We're all friends here." Valentino's protests were drowned out by excited chatter as he was herded further into the house.
"You simply must let us help you get ready,"
someone cooed, plucking the pizza box from his hands and passing it off to a waiter.
"But I'm not..."
Valentino tried again, only to be cut off by a flurry of activity. Gentle but insistent hands guided him up a sweeping staircase and into a lavishly appointed dressing room. Racks of glittering gowns lined the walls, and a vanity overflowed with an array of makeup and accessories. "Now then," said the person in the emerald gown, who seemed to be in charge.
"Let's see what we have to work with."
Before Valentino could object, he found himself divested of his work uniform and herded behind a changing screen. A champagne-colored gown was thrust into his hands.
"Try this on, darling. I think it'll suit your coloring beautifully."
Valentino's head spun. This had to be some kind of weird dream, but as his fingers brushed the silky fabric, a strange thrill ran through him. Almost of their own accord, his hands began to slip the gown over his head. The material whispered against his skin as it settled into place. Valentino smoothed it down, marveling at how it hugged his body. He stepped out from behind the screen, cheeks flushed. A chorus of delighted gasps greeted him. "Oh, you look absolutely divine! That gown was made for you, darling. Now for hair and makeup. Sit, sit." Valentino found himself perched in front of the vanity, surrounded by a whirlwind of activity. Skilled hands applied foundation, blush, and shimmering eyeshadow. False lashes fluttered as they were affixed. A wig of flowing chestnut curls was carefully placed and styled. As the final touches were added, Valentino barely recognized his reflection. The person staring back at him was beautiful, radiant. He felt a warmth blooming in his chest, a sense of rightness he he'd never experienced before.
There,
the emerald-gowned host declared.
You're perfect. Now let's get you downstairs to join the party.
Valentino rose on unsteady feet, unused to the delicate heels that had been slipped onto his feet. But as he took his first tentative steps, he found a grace he never knew he possessed. The ballroom was a swirl of color and music. Couples twirled across the dance floor, gowns swishing in time with the orchestra. Valentino accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, sipping it as he took in the scene.
May I have this dance?
A handsome man in a midnight blue gown appeared at his elbow, offering a gloved hand. Valentino hesitated for only a moment before placing his hand in the stranger's.
I'd be delighted.
As they moved across the dance floor, Valentino marveled at how natural it felt. The gown swirled around his legs, the corset accentuating every movement. He felt graceful, elegant, feminine.
You move beautifully,
his partner murmured.
Are you new to our little soiree?
Valentino nodded, a bit breathless from the dance and the heady atmosphere. Yes, it's my first time. The man smiled warmly. Well, you're a natural, my dear. I hope we'll be seeing more of you at future events. As the night wore on, Valentino found himself swept up in the joyous atmosphere. He danced with countless partners, shared laughter over glasses of champagne, and received countless compliments on his appearance. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen, truly himself. As the party began to wind down in the early hours of the morning, Valentino found a quiet corner to catch his breath. He gazed at his reflection in a gilded mirror, hardly able to believe the transformation.
Having a good time, darling?
The emerald-gowned host appeared at his side. Valentino nodded, a lump forming in his throat.
I've never felt like this before. So free. So me.
The host smiled knowingly.
That's what these gatherings are all about, my dear. A safe space for all of us to explore and express ourselves. To be who we truly are, even if it's just for one magical night.
Valentino's mind raced as memories flooded back, stealing furtive glances at his sister's clothes when he was young. The secret thrill he'd felt trying on a friend's prom dress as a joke. The way his heart had skipped a beat when he'd seen drag queens performing at a local club. All those moments he'd pushed aside, buried deep. But now, standing here in this shimmering gown, it all made sense.
I think,
Valentino said slowly, that this might not be my first time thinking about this side of myself. The host squeezed his hand.
It rarely is, darling, but it takes courage to embrace it. I'm so glad you found your way to us tonight.
As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the windows, Valentino reluctantly prepared to leave. He changed back into his work uniform, but kept the makeup on, not quite ready to let go of the magical night. Will you be joining us again? The host asked, as he saw Valentino to the door. Valentino nodded, a smile spreading across his face.
Wild horses couldn't keep me away.
As he drove home, the events of the night replayed in his mind. The swish of fabric against his legs, the click of heels on polished floors, the feeling of being truly, authentically himself. Valentino realized with startling clarity that he loved it. Loved dressing like a woman. Loved embracing his feminine side. It wasn't just a costume or a game. It was a part of him he'd been denying for far too long. He pulled into his driveway just as the sun crested the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. As Valentino stepped out of his car, he felt like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. The world looked different now, full of possibilities he'd never dared to imagine before. He knew the road ahead might be challenging, but for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. Valentino took a deep breath, savoring the crisp morning air. He was ready to embrace this new chapter of his life, one sequin at a time. As he unlocked his front door, Valentino's mind was already racing with plans. He'd need to invest in some proper clothes, makeup, maybe even a wig of his own. The thought filled him with excitement rather than fear. Inside, he caught his reflection in the hallway mirror. Though the gown and wig were gone, traces of the night's transformation remained. His eyes, framed by false lashes, seemed to sparkle with newfound confidence. A smudge of glitter on his cheek caught the light. Valentino smiled at his reflection, feeling a surge of affection for both the person he'd been and the person he was becoming. He realized that this journey of self-discovery had been a long time coming. Memories flooded back, moments he'd dismissed or rationalized away, like the time in middle school when he'd volunteered to play a female role in the school play, relishing every moment in the costume, or how he'd always gravitated towards female characters in video games, spending hours customizing their outfits and appearance. Even his choice of pizza delivery as a job suddenly made more sense. He'd always enjoyed the brief moments of transformation, donning the uniform and becoming someone else for a few hours. Valentino made his way to the kitchen, his movements still carrying a hint of the grace he'd discovered on the dance floor. As he brewed a pot of coffee, his mind wandered to practical considerations. He'd need to research, find out more about the cross-dressing community, learn about makeup techniques, discover where to shop for clothes that would fit him properly. The task seemed daunting, but exhilarating. As the rich aroma of coffee filled the air, Valentino's phone buzzed. A text from his boss at the pizza place. "Everything okay? You never reported back after your last delivery." Reality came crashing back. In all the excitement, he'd completely forgotten about work. Guilt warred with the lingering euphoria of the night.
"Sorry,"
he typed back.
"Got a flat tire. Had to wait for a tow. Won't happen again."
It was a weak excuse, but it would have to do. Valentino made a mental note to be more careful in the future. As much as he wanted to explore this new side of himself, he couldn't neglect his responsibilities. The lie left a bitter taste in his mouth, souring the magical memories of the night. Valentino sipped his coffee, pondering the challenges ahead. How would he balance this newfound passion with his daily life? Would he be able to keep it a secret? Did he even want to? He thought about his family, his friends. How would they react if they knew? The thought sent a flutter of anxiety through his stomach, but it was quickly overshadowed by a stronger feeling: determination. This was who he was, who he'd always been, even if he hadn't realized it. And he was done hiding. Valentino set down his coffee mug with a decisive clink. He pulled out his laptop and began to research, hungry for information. He lost himself for hours in a world of tutorials, forums, and online shops. As the day wore on, exhaustion began to set in. Valentino hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but his mind was too wired to rest. He forced himself to close the laptop, knowing he needed to get some sleep before his next shift. But as he lay in bed, sleep eluded him. His mind raced with possibilities, with fears, with excitement. He kept replaying moments from the ball, the swish of fabric, the clinking of champagne glasses, the warmth of acceptance. Valentino tossed and turned, his body tired, but his spirit restless. He felt like he was standing on the precipice of something monumental, something that would change the course of his life forever. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Valentino's dreams were filled with shimmering gowns and twirling dancers. In his dreams, he moved with confidence and grace, fully embracing every aspect of himself. When he awoke several hours later, the memories of the night before came flooding back. For a moment, Valentino wondered if it had all been an elaborate dream. But the smudges of makeup still visible on his pillow confirmed the reality of his experience. He sat up, running a hand through his tousled hair. The world seemed different somehow, as if the events of the night had shifted something fundamental within him. Valentino's gaze fell on his closet, filled with the mundane clothes of his everyday life. They suddenly seemed lacking, unable to express the complexity of who he truly was. With a surge of impulsivity, he grabbed his keys and headed out. He didn't have another shift at the pizza place until evening, leaving him with several hours to spare. The mall was bustling with afternoon shoppers as Valentino made his way inside. He hesitated for a moment, suddenly unsure of himself, but the memory of how he'd felt in that ball gown gave him courage. He made his way to a department store, his heart pounding as he approached the women's section. Valentino tried to appear nonchalant as he browsed the racks, but his hands trembled slightly as he touched the soft fabrics.
Can I help you find anything?
A cheerful sales associate appeared at his elbow. Valentino froze, his cheeks flushing. The associate's smile never wavered.
Shopping for a girlfriend? Or maybe something for yourself?
Her tone was kind, free of judgment. Valentino felt a wave of relief wash over him.
For me,
he admitted quietly.
But I'm not sure where to start.
The associate, whose name tag read Melissa, nodded understandingly.
Well, let's see what we can find that suits you. Do you have any particular style in mind?
Valentino thought back to the ball, to the gowns that had made him feel so beautiful.
Something elegant,
he said. But maybe a bit more everyday? Melissa's eyes lit up. I think I have just the thing. Follow me. She led him to a section filled with flowing skirts and delicate blouses. Valentino's fingers trailed over the fabrics, marveling at the variety of textures and patterns. These pieces are versatile, Melissa explained. You can dress them up or down. Why don't you try a few on? Before he knew it, Valentino found himself in a fitting room, arms laden with clothes. He slipped on a silk blouse, the material cool against his skin. A flowing midi skirt followed, settling around his waist. Valentino turned to the mirror and gasped softly. The person staring back at him was a perfect blend of masculine and feminine, strong and soft. He felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Everything okay in there? Melissa called.
Yes,
Valentino replied, his voice thick with emotion.
Everything's perfect.
He emerged from the fitting room, nervous but proud. Melissa beamed at him. You look wonderful, she said warmly. How does it feel? Valentino smoothed his hands over the skirt, a smile spreading across his face.
It feels like me.
He left the store with several bags, his wallet considerably lighter, but his heart soaring. As he walked through the mall, Valentino felt as if he was seeing the world through new eyes. Everything seemed brighter, more vivid. His phone buzzed, a reminder that his shift at the pizza place started in an hour. Reality intruded once again, but this time, Valentino didn't feel deflated. Instead, he felt a quiet determination. He might not be able to wear his new clothes to work, but he carried the confidence they gave him. Valentino knew that this was just the beginning of his journey, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was on the right path. As he changed into his work uniform, Valentino carefully hung up his new clothes. They were a promise, a glimpse of the person he was becoming. He touched the soft fabric one last time before heading out, the memory of how they felt giving him strength. The pizza shop was bustling when Valentino arrived, the dinner rush in full swing. He threw himself into work, his movements more graceful than before, as if his body remembered the elegance of the ball. As he drove through the city making deliveries, Valentino's mind wandered. He thought about the challenges ahead, the conversations he'd need to have, the changes he'd need to make. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt a sense of excitement. Each delivery was a small adventure, a chance to interact with the world as this new version of himself. Even in his work uniform, Valentino felt different, more confident, more present. As his shift neared its end, Valentino found himself making a delivery to a familiar neighborhood. His heart skipped a beat as he realized it was the same street where the charity ball had been held. He pulled up in front of the mansion, memories of the previous night flooding back. The house was dark now, no sign of the magical event that had transpired within its walls. Valentino delivered the pizza, half expecting the door to swing open and reveal a world of glitter and gowns. But it was just an ordinary transaction, the customer barely glancing at him as they paid. As he walked back to his car, Valentino paused, looking back at the mansion. From the outside, it looked like any other wealthy home. But he knew the secrets it held, the transformations it had witnessed. In that moment, Valentino made a decision. He would find a way back to that world. Not just for one night, but as a regular part of his life. He would embrace every facet of himself, no matter the challenges.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!